Welcome to the Crystal Coach Show with me, your host, Anahata, helping you live every day with clarity, guidance, and practical wisdom. Are you feeling overwhelmed, anxious, maybe disconnected? Do you ever feel like you don't know how to live a life of peace and joy? I am Anahata Roach, the Crystal Coach, and during this show, we channel divine wisdom through stories of service, spirituality, and stones for self-care. The Crystal Coach Show leaves you with a feeling of connection and the clarity it takes towards becoming the best version of yourself as you hear from thought leaders and many others to help you ignite the crystalline nature of who you really are. Stay tuned. The Crystal Coach Show starts now. Hello again, and welcome to the Crystal Coach Show. I'm your host, Anahata. I'm delighted to have you join me on this another episode of the Crystal Coach Show. And today, actually, I'm going to revisit something first. In a previous episode, wasn't that long ago, I was discussing the messy process of grief with certified emotional educator Nathan M. McTague. When Nathan brought up an interesting thought. Have we, as a modern culture, turned our backs on the traditional ritual of grieving in favor of a happiness doctrine? So I decided to do some research on my own around happiness. And Nathan actually might be onto something. Did you know that the world's longest running scientific survey on happiness concluded after about 80 plus years of research? What was learned from that? Did a specific definition emerge? Those were thoughts that I had, but I found it's full of interesting insights. So we're going to explore this today on the Crystal Coach Show. Let's dive in. How do you define happiness? Well, when it comes to happiness, there's no magic one-size-fits-all solution. And what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for someone else. It seems that before the pandemic, we had this collective mindset to push through, get it done, suck it up. But during the pandemic, it changed all that. And actually, many people predicted that after the pandemic, the world would kind of revert to this roaring 20s kind of culture where, wild parties and freestyle living was a thing, right? But there wasn't as much of that as was predicted because we'd all been through so much loss. And we're all working through it the best we can. But research shows that the collective obsession on how to be happy today can actually be traced in large part to the onset of the digital revolution, social media, and the ever-present advertising of material things and lifestyles that are touted as ways to make us happy. In effect, we've been brainwashed. We're constantly seeing how others live in a way that subtly tells us that we can't possibly be happy if we don't have X, or we don't do Y, or we don't become Z. Okay. For example, millennials, when surveyed on what they believed would make them happy as adults, 80% said being rich. Being famous was next at 50% and tied with having a high achieving career. And that was their definition of happiness. Well, those of us with a bit more life experience understand that being rich, famous, or successful isn't necessarily the key to happiness. In fact, this 85-year study I referred to earlier found that a person's feeling of happiness peaked at about $75,000 a year in income. That's about enough to cover all your basic creature comforts: housing, food, clothing, transportation, healthcare, child support. But beyond that, more wealth didn't directly correlate to improved happiness. Whether one has 75,000 a year in income or 75 million. Isn't that fascinating? They say money doesn't buy happiness. So what is it? What is happiness? Well, let's talk about what the survey says. In this study, which was conducted by Harvard University in Boston, Massachusetts, began in 1938 with actually two separate groups of young white males around 19 years old. One group was affluent, and the other group were juvenile delinquents. The study followed them throughout their lives and eventually included their wives and children. One of the original members of this study was John F. Kennedy, who went on to become our US president. Dr. Robert Waldinger, a clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and the current director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which is this longest running scientific study of adult life ever conducted, has written a book to share the findings from this study. And that's where I found most of this reference material. That book is called The Good Life, which became a New York Times bestseller. The book is Dr. Waldinger's effort to answer the question, what brings us happiness? What do we need to feel as though we're living a good life? It is Dr. Waldinger who believes that the reason many think that wealth is the key to happiness is that the good life is defined for us, not by us. Ads tell us that we ought to look and act a certain way and consume goods that should make us happy, right? We judge ourselves every day against the lives of others. Dr. Waldinger was quoted during an interview as referring to what a mentor of his had told him. Quote, "We are always comparing our insides to other people's outsides." That's huge. Let me read it again. We're always comparing our insides to other people's outsides. So the younger generations who have grown up in the digital age are particularly vulnerable to this self-comparison. Hence the rise of social media influencers. So what did this study conclude? We're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we're going to list some of those really interesting results. And then I'm going to give you some stones that I think would be really helpful to put you in a state where you can feel happy, when you can feel relaxed, you can feel at ease. I mean, no one can tell you how to feel happy but you. But the interesting insights are coming up. We're going to cover that in just a minute. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the results are in. Hi, and welcome back to the Crystal Coach Show. I'm Anahata, and we're talking today about the definition of happiness and the studies that have been done around happiness and why we all think happiness has to do with things that don't mean anything, like being rich or famous or having a really successful career that might help, but it's not going to make us happy. I've been discussing this, the results of this 85-year study around adult development and what makes people happy. And they did all of these things to figure out, how people react to different situations in their lives. But I'm going to give you a drum roll, okay? The answer is, what makes happiness? Relationships. Really? The study found that the people who stayed healthiest and lived the longest were the people who had strongest connections to others. The warmth of these connections had a direct positive impact on their health and well-being. Wow. Wow. Women are the ones that really know this intuitively. And it's really kind of ironic that it took an 85-year study, mostly conducted by, and led by men of a certain race and age and all that, to tell us that the key to happiness is relationships. Women would probably say, well, yeah, duh. And the most things that women report as an interference to their own happiness is their comparison of themselves to others. So we talked about that before break, was that, this is the big bugaboo, is that we look outside, we are comparing our insides to how we see things on the outside. And it's just, it's not the same at all. And we're projecting. And so that makes us discontent or unhappy in some aspects. So if, you think about how your strong connections to family or friends or work colleagues or groups make you feel, and how you get satisfaction from that, or if someone that you can confide in, that it makes you feel safe, that's a connection, that's a relationship that makes you feel less anxious, right? Let me see, there was some other things I wanted to tell you about. Okay, so in the study, that the men replied that they wished they hadn't spent as much time at work, but with the people they cared about, right? And participants were proud of being both a good parent, partner, friend, or mentor. That was what they're most proud of. So again, this points to these relationships. So, that's like the best things in life aren't things. That's what Dr. Waldner said, the author of The Good Life. Material things, he says, lends themselves to comparisons, but experiences either strengthen pre-existing relationships with people or help us meet new people. So how can we fix this? Okay, if relationship is the answer to being, or good relationships are the answer to being happy, how can we fix it? So Dr. Waldner was quoted, well, actually, he quoted one of his Zen teachers, a man named John Tarrant, stating that attention is the most basic form of love. So Dr. Waldner was saying that our undivided attention is the most valuable thing we have to give to each other. And I totally agree. When you show up and you are present for someone else, they can show up and be present for you. The path of least resistance seems to be driving us towards social isolation, but we need to be really, really intentional and dedicated to structuring our lives, so at work and at home, so that we can fight against this current. We can make and build, and it takes, it does take an effort. It takes a lot of work to maintain and cultivate friendships and relationships, but it's so worth it. I mean, to live longer and feel happier, who wouldn't want that? It's interesting about introverts and extroverts. It's actually, I don't know if any of you ever did a Myers-Briggs kind of personality testing, but they test. Introversion is in my understanding of it, is a way that you process information, you process internally. So you work through all your problems inside before you speak out. And when you speak, you usually have an answer because you've already worked it through. Extroverts, on the other hand, are those that have to speak in order to process. So they have to talk to somebody, they have to talk it out in order to get to a point of understanding or seeing a way through or an answer. Right. So introverts may only need a few relationships, whereas, you know, actually, introverts can get stressed out if they got too many. But, you know, our culture tends to really like hold up extroverts, is that's the way in which you're supposed to operate. You're supposed to have, all of these friends, all these groups of friends, and groups of other groups, right? And friends and friends and friends, right? It- It's that's necessary. That's the answer. That's really not really the answer. The answer is finding a good life is really understanding that one size does not fit all. So if you're an introvert, you can relax. You don't have to be an extrovert in order to be happy. Um, you know, the individual's baseline i- is also, like the mood baseline is also something that you need to consider, because people can have the exact same experience, exact same circumstances, and some can be happier and some can be sadder. It's really Dr. Waldinger explained that about 50% of happiness comes from a genetically based temperamental factor, um, and about 10% comes from life circumstances, and about 40% can be changed. I thought that was really fascinating. Um, yeah, women are typically socialized to care more about relationships. So what the good life does is not really revealing something to this world that's a shocker. It's just that there's, scientific data now to back up what our grandmothers and their mothers and their mothers and their mothers have always known. And we have always kind of had in our hearts that the key to happiness is feeling good about the people that are around you, and having good folks around you that reflect to you and share with you a love that is accepted. It's a place of acceptance, right? And so anyway, I thought that would be a really cool thing to share with you all. I mean, I'm just like really so into this whole sheaf of information around happiness now. I mean, there's lots of other things going on. There's lots of other books. There's a book called Awe by another Harvard professor named Dr. Keltner, and it's AWE, awe, that the experience of this intake of breath, right? And that's like a taking it on a different little track from what the good life is talking about. There's also another thing called the Happiness Project, which values learning as a key to happiness. But as I say, it boils down to individuals. It just your personality, your genetic predisposition to be happy, to find things that are happy or not. But don't if you're feeling sad, don't discount that. And that was why I'm bringing this all back to the fact that in my discussion with Nathan McTague on grief, we talked about how those ancient rituals of grieving, wearing black or having this certain specific time set aside to mourn, um, is no longer an acceptable practice in our culture. because everybody, wants to be happy. My take on this is that relationships, ebb and flow. Um, good solid relationships and people that you can count on. And that might be one or two people in this whole world that you can count on, or it's in one hand. I've got five really, really close friends. And the rest of the people are just people I know, or I might socialize with, or I might see in a social occasion. But I don't share my inmost thoughts with them. I don't connect with them on the same level. Does that make sense? Anyway, I'm glad that we could cover that, because I feel like that, the grief episode needed to be balanced with the happiness episode. So I'm gonna let's see. No, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to segue now into our um, stones that I've picked out that would be really helpful to support us in relationships, in our own pursuit of connection, and feeling more at ease in doing so. So hang on a second, I'll pull them all out. All right. So I know for the folks that are listening, that you can't see the video and you see what I'm holding up, but for those of you watching the live stream and the recording, you'll be able to see what I'm holding up. And those of you who are just listening, you can look them up later if you're interested. So I've shown this before, like many times, because it's one of my go-to stones. But black tourmaline is such a wonderful stone for pulling out negativity from your field. So if you're kind of getting into a spiral of rah, 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 everything's bad, it's terrible, Eeyore kind of day, oh, I'm so sad. The black tourmaline's going to help you get that pulled out of your energy field. So I always have black tourmaline with me. I've spoken about rose quartz too. Rose quartz is it's just this wonderful, loving energy, and helps to support the way you love yourself. Because we can't really start to love other people until we love ourselves. Because if we don't love ourselves, then no one, it's impossible, would be able to love you enough. And we get kind of stuck in that expectation that somebody else is going to love us enough to make us feel better about ourselves. And I'm here to tell you the number one thing to do is work on your own self-love. Rose quartz supports that. Another thing that this is a fun rock. It's called Bumblebee Jasper. It's yellow with black. And this is a raw piece. A lot of polished pieces look really even more vibrant than this. But it looks like a bumblebee. It's the yellow and the black of a bumblebee. And I use it. I mean, actually, when I'm in my body work, I connect to client's body, and the body tells me what it wants where. But bodies call for this stone a lot, especially on the solar plexus. And I call it my don't worry, be happy stone. Bumblebee Jasper is just a really it's almost like a fun little fuzzy, it's a warm fuzzy vibration. And so I thought in the pursuit of happiness, this might be a really good support stone. Another support stone would be good is Amazonite. Amazonite is a water element, so it supports your emotional body anyway. But Amazonite, it's like your best friend. It's like, I'm going to make you feel calm and centered and peaceful and collected, and it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. That's just the kind of warm feeling and supportive energy of this Amazonite. It also helps you to speak your heart's truth. So if you've been walking around telling people what you think they want to hear, that's not improving your happiness scale, is it? It's not improving your happiness rating. Amazonite helps you speak your heart's truth, not your head's thinking of what somebody might want to hear, but what you really feel. So Amazonite's really good to support feeling calmer and more at peace. And I have Lapetolite. Lapetolite comes in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, but it is this kind of mica-like, flashy purple, really beautiful, deep purple. And when it comes in flat things, it presents in a flat type of form. That actually can be used like a little sedative at night. You can tuck it under your pillow, like in between your pillow and your pillowcase, in the back side of your pillow, so your head will be on the top. And this vibration helps you turn off that monkey mind, helps you to kind of relax. Interestingly, the main ingredient in Lapetolite, in this chemical formula, is lithium. So lithium used to be used back in the day as a sedative. So Lapetolite's really good to kind of turn off the monkey mind, help you feel calmer, help you relax and sleep, and actually be in this kind of state of acceptance. Now, sometimes we can't know what we don't know. And you know, if you always have to know why something happened the way it did, why did this happen to me? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. So the only thing that matters is if you can find out if it's something that you can correct and never do again, then that's a learning opportunity. But if it's one of those impossible kinds of things that you would never know really fully, clearly, the Lapetolite helps you to accept that and move on. Last, I have a piece of pink tourmaline, pink, beautiful pink tourmaline. It might be also known as rubellite, but when it's presented in this really gemmy kind of structure, it is called pink tourmaline, and that's all about inner peace. Just really calm inner peace, and I feel happy when I have it in my pocket. So I thought that these might be really good for you to, if you want to start a happiness collection, a happiness kit. Black tourmaline, rose quartz, amazonite, bumblebee jasper, lapetolite, and pink tourmaline. Then if you want to throw in a bonus, I have an earth element of bloodstone. Bloodstone is the stone of courage. It's facing your fears and doing it anyway. Bloodstone is what the Roman soldiers took into battle with them to help them face what they had to face the enemy, do what they had to do, give them the strength and stamina to be the soldier that they were meant to be. So be the soldier you meant to be for yourself. And if you choose, you can add courage support to your happiness kit. So that's really all I have to say to you today. I hope that you enjoy the information I've presented, and you'll join me next time on the Crystal Coach Show. I'm on live every first Monday and third Monday of the month. And I appreciate your comments and feedback. Any archives would be on transformationtalkradio.com or on my YouTube channel, Anahata Roach, the Crystal Coach. But actually the YouTube handle is at the Crystal Coach. And it's not the one with all of the numbers after it. It's just the Crystal Coach. That's mine. So until next time, be happy. Have a good one. You have been listening to The Crystal Coach Show, helping you live every day with clarity, guidance, and practical wisdom. With me, your host, Anahata. Tune in every first and third Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where we channel divine wisdom through stories of service, spirituality, and stones for self-care. Feel connected and reside in the vibration of love on The Crystal Coach Show. For more information and to become the best version of yourself, visit thecrystalcoach.com. That's thecrystalcoach.com. See you next time.